Recording in progress.
Good. Okay, go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'll start off with a roll call. McKee here. Councilor Schultz is absent. Fatima?
Barely present.
Varenkamp?
Apologize.
And Councilor Nichols is out of town. If you'd like to stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda approval. We have anything from staff? I saw there was a handful of modifications or updated consent items mostly.
Yes, Mayor, there's 6 items that we updated. The first item, it was the completion of the regular council minutes, was item 7A. Item 7B, we had some additions to the financial claims for the month. Item 7I, happy to report we had an additional commissioner application submitted since the initial report. Item 7J, recruitment and retention policy, there were some minor changes to the staff report, putting it within a calendar year of 2024 and changing the erroneous phrase from just police department to police officer in the staff report. And then item 7K, there was one addition from legal, adding information related to leaving the state of Minnesota if you're working remotely, because there's tax implications. And so that was in addition to that policy. And then finally, item 8A, we had the addition of the flow chart that we'll be discussing this evening. No other additions.
Great, thank you. Anything else?
No.
No?
Nothing.
I will...
Motion to approve.
Second.
As amended?
Yes.
Perfect. Motion second.
I said yes for both of us.
I think we're good.
We good? Okay.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, commission representatives. We have John Horn, I believe is on virtually, and Val Nybo here in person. So thank you both. And then we have open forum. And Jay, if you want to walk us through that for items not on tonight's agenda.
Yes, if there's anyone here this evening that would like to step up to the microphone and speak about an item that is not on this evening's agenda, now is your opportunity to do so. Anyone who'd like to speak on something not on the agenda? Going once, twice? We have no one there.
Great, thank you. Consent agenda, it's a big one consisting of items 7A through 7O. Does anyone want to pull anything? John?
No, I don't.
Nope. Okay. Dean?
I had some stuff I wanted to pull.
Pull it.
It'll be real quick.
Yeah.
If we could pull D,
D.
G,
G.
J,
J.
and L.
Sounds good.
Just quick conversations
and I
about
will
those.
pull, let's see here, 7C and 7I really quick.
Motion to approve consent agenda with mentioned polling items.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And just, if it helps Michelle, we approved A, B, E, F, H, K, M, N, O. There. We'll start with 7C, which was a letter of resignation or a letter mentioning that he will not be seeking another term on the Planning Commission from Commissioner Horn. I had a brief conversation with him today, and just kind of with where he is in life, and he'll be out of town more than I think than he thought initially, so unfortunately he won't be able to commit full time, but we definitely wanted to thank him for his time and service on the commission and his valuable input, and we do kind of have a tradition of reading a resolution of support, so I'll do that here quick, and then if anyone else has comments, feel free to jump in. Whereas John Horn was appointed as a planning commissioner for an initial term from September 8th, 2022 to February 29th, 2024. And whereas during his tenure on the Planning Commission, John assisted in reviewing various development plans, including Red Barn, Pet Retreat, and Corcoran Storage 2. And whereas John's civil engineering background proved valuable in the review of development proposals, and whereas John provided input on several zoning ordinance amendments, including updates to the plan unit development standards, and whereas John Horn has elected to end his service on the Planning Commission as his term expires February 29th, 2024, and whereas the City of Corcoran recognizes the time, energy, dedication, and leadership provided by John Horn. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Corcoran that the City Council hereby honors John Horn for his distinguished service to the City of Corcoran and the residents of the city. And again, just wanted to say thank you, John, for your time on the commission. And appreciate all the input you've shared and helped, kind of improve some projects that have come in and some code items. So thank you.
And if I can add to it, if things change and we have openings,
Absolutely.
re-up, please.
Absolutely.
John's great. Good.
Yeah. Well said. Okay, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda item 7C?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, 7D, was that you, Dean?
D, I'm excited for this to happen. I am not a fan of roundabouts, but something needs to be done at that intersection. Appreciate the involvement. Didn't realize it was going to be partly a cost burden on us as a city. I wanted to ask, is that something we have to be in just because it's a shared type deal, even though it's two county roads? Every time I've been asked something, we can't do anything about it because it's a county road has been our answer, and now we've got a county road making an adjustment, and now we're on the hook for $150-some thousand.
Yeah, that's a projected cost, but the best projected cost we have, that's just driven by the Hennepin County's cost participation policy.
Okay,
So they, I guess frankly, wouldn't invest in the road unless we contributed, even though it's two county roads. That's
Okay.
just their policy.
and then my biggest thing is, I read the information or letter of support. I would really like a substantial berm in the middle of that roundabout so it can't be cut across. We've got one of those shortcut roundabouts up on 101 and Territorial Road that doesn't do a lot, and it looks like the plans or the pre-plans and stuff are quite substantial, and it'll change a significant bit, and it should improve that intersection significantly. I want to make sure if we have anything to say, I'd like a substantial berm there and take care of it the right way first time.
Yep, I apologize. So there's kind of two different versions of roundabouts. One that we'd maybe call a full roundabout, for lack of a better term, and then a mini roundabout, for lack of a better term. And it's really dictated by space availability needs. What I think we're pursuing here is the larger one, the full roundabout. The design hasn't been completed. It's still at the concept phase. This is, funding for 2028, 2029, but this type of project requires that type of lead time and those type of resources. So I suspect that they're looking towards, it looks like they're looking towards a full roundabout. That detail hasn't been done.
Okay.
We're committing that we support the project here, but we're not signing off on any sort of agreement. So we have two options. We can either make sure we talk about that in the design in 3 years when there is a design, or I could suggest adding the word full instead of the roundabout in the resolution, the letter. Just insert the word full to give a little more support to that, at least in the letter, for someone else to reference. So I'll leave that up to you. Those are the two suggestions. I think we're fine leaving it as is, but if you wanted to reinforce that position, we could insert the word full.
Is there a way that we could ask, related to public safety and such, to turn that into a four-way stop until that time?
We don't have control over that.
I know.
I think that they're monitoring and aware of it, so I think they're moving towards the way they are. we can always ask what we want. I would want our team to do an analysis. I'm not sure a four-way stop we would want to go through that analysis maybe before we made that recommendation.
Can I ask a question too?
Please.
And you're done?
Please, I'm done.
What's wrong with the light there?
What's wrong with the light there?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with the volumes. It's pretty, northwest versus the same volume traffics from each direction. So it has a little bit to do with volume. The argument could be made that if there is an accident there in a roundabout, you're slowing down and kind of side swiping versus head-on collision. So it's really driven by the data. I don't have the data to speak to it, but those are some of the factors. I can certainly follow up with an email from them saying why they're leading towards a roundabout versus a signaled intersection, but I would tend to believe it has to do with the traffic patterns and the impact angles if there were going to be an accident. So, from a safety perspective.
Typically, does a county road require municipal input in dollars? Like, do we,
That's why
like
we're-
if 101 has an intersection with 117, do we typically put money in? Or is it like, if it's a county road intersecting with a county road, like, I'm fine with saying, yeah, that's fine, but the dollar amount, do we typically,
I think according to Hennepin's policy,
Hennepin's
they
co-
would say,
Hennepin's policy says we pay for 50%.
What if we
So
don't?
why we're at
Okay, it's not
152 in
good.
this proposal versus more is because they're seeking other funds that would offset against our contribution. So Hennepin County's policy is that we have to, certain improvements, we have to do 50% match, which is fairly significant and
Yeah.
fairly frustrating. That's noted by staff.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would do a project if we contributed $0. I mean, that's their policy. I don't.
is that the policy in Plymouth and Golden Valley and anywhere, like the local people have to contribute money too?
Yep, it's Hennepin County's policy for work on their roads. So any community in Hennepin County would have to comply with that. And there's different options. There's actually options where the city can take over.
We don't want to take
Yeah,
over.
and actually pay more.
Yeah,
like,
so-
in an example of Plymouth, they actually took over Chicada. I mean, that was a project that was talked about for a long time.
We also call that County 47. Yeah,
Not anymore, County Road 47 now, it's a turnback, so now it's not a county road anymore. In
yeah,
that specific case, but that project stagnated because the county, it wasn't ready to commit funds. So the city, and then broadly somewhere,
Fair
then the
enough.
city of Plymouth stepped up, got additional funds and basically committed to taking over the road, and that's how the project advanced. So a lot of the county improvement projects are led by the cities, unfortunately. So what this is all we're doing here is committing to that we think it's a good project, they're projecting costs, we don't know, they'll come back with a formal agreement if it advances. But I don't think that we'd be eligible for these grants if we say we don't like the project. So that's what we're committing to today. I don't see the Hennepin County's policy changing significantly. I don't know of a city that likes their policy.
Yeah,
So
it's worth asking the questions. I'm
I
putting
can
it out
follow
there.
up with why they went with the roundabout design, or they're showing a concept at roundabout. Again, the design isn't finalized. I suspect that they feel this is where they're trending. I can certainly follow up with them on an explanation between the two. And
That'd be great if we
route
could
that
just
through to,
see what they say.
I sort of
I'd
get,
rather have a stoplight like John suggested than a roundabout.
I don't care, a roundabout or a stoplight, it's not a Corcoran city road. We didn't design it, we didn't ask for it. I prefer if they're gonna fund it or do it, that it's a county road. It's not a city road.
I would say, Councilmember Bonneman, coming from a different county, that's been my experience in two other counties. It was in Carver County as well as in Scott County, the expectation of a county road within a municipality, a cost share was expected, and 50/50 was typically, and also in those other experiences, the municipalities were not happy about it at all. But for the sake of the residents that will be using those spaces, they stepped forward and helped. And in some cases, towards Kevin's point, the municipalities have had to pay more in order to achieve the objectives that they desired, because the county was not willing to if they did not.
So none of our residents of Corcoran go west. So 1% of our of our city traffic goes west at any time. So they're asking us to foot the bill for a road that goes west. Right? Am I wrong about that?
No. It is a bad intersection that I don't
Totally
know if
bad
you're commuting
intersection.
from
We
that
gotta get it
often, but I mean, I think we've all been on it a few times, and if you get on it at bad times,
100%.
it's tough
I've
to
been
get.
on it a million times going
Yeah.
west.
So someone from the city does go west.
A
Huh?
million, at least a
Someone from
million,
the
at
city
least a
does go
million
west.
times.
Yes.
Yes.
But yeah, I get your point. I don't love
So
having to pay.
we're diverting traffic from Highway 9 in the morning from state or Interstate
Interstate.
94 through a county road, through our town. Anyone here go west on 117 through Hanover in the morning going west? Anyone here desperately need a roundabout going west on 117 going west ever? Anyone here going from Hanover to Corcoran in rush hour desperately need a roundabout going east to our town? Anyone need that? You really clamoring that our town pays for that?
I think it's a fair point, but I think if we want to see it potentially improved, that the reality is we're going to have to.
We don't need it though.
Well,
We're the city council of Corcoran.
yeah, I mean, that can be the outcome we come to.
I would point out that about the northern third of our city is the Buffalo Hanover School District, so you do
Yep.
get a lot of the school traffic heading to the Buffalo school and back. And I know some of the crashes we've seen there have involved young people, I don't know if they were high schoolers or not, but it being a complicated intersection, and we do have some traffic that, school-related traffic that goes that way.
Yeah.
It needs to be improved. I just,
How much, what are we on the
stop
hook?
signs or a
What are we-
stoplight would
I
be
think it's like
cheaper.
150.
What are we on the hook for of the percentage of the of the project?
Of a percentage of the project, I want to say it was like 3%.
It was less than 10, correct, Tyler?
Yeah, it's offset quite a bit if they're able to get some of this additional funding. Trying to
Here it
see
is.
the summary table here.
Yeah.
That's what we're
Looks like
looking
it's
for.
a $4.6 million project, and they have us allotted for $152,000. So let me do the math.
About a little over 3%.
And to your point in that chart, Hanover, which might have more traffic coming this direction, is expected to be more.
They're paying about 100,000
Yeah.
more if I saw it right.
Yeah. Almost.
And so 3.25%, and that's just preliminary. That number in percentage would change, but I would anticipate it to be in the low single digits.
So what's the, what do we need to pass it? Do we need a,
What do you mean?
We're supporting,
yeah,
we're
do we
just
need
sending a
a,
letter
do we
of
need
support.
a majority of those present, or do we need a,
Be a majority of those present, I believe. There wouldn't be any supermajority.
it's not a 4/5?
No.
Okay, or it's not a,
Supermajority.
yeah. Because we don't get 3 tonight. Okay,
Mhm.
fine.
Well, we don't need,
We need 2 tonight.
we need
Need
2
two.
tonight, yeah, to approve it.
Fair
yeah.
enough. Okay.
Okay, any other questions or discussion on it?
With that discussion and all of the can open and worms everywhere kind of deal, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
2-1.
Who made the second?
We
Yeah,
did make
you-
the second.
I didn't make
Me.
a second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will follow up with that, requesting the difference between the signal and the roundabout.
You get the gist of what we're talking.
Okay.
Thank you.
We passed
thank
a
you, Mr.
resolution
Mayor.
supporting, I don't know if we need,
Letter of support is what we passed.
yeah, we don't need
That follow
additional,
up later? Okay.
no. Uh-uh.
Okay.
I know we've thanked everybody on the holiday food drive and those kind of things. Budget, date selection, I understand that.
Yeah, you're on to 7G.
G is the next thing I pulled.
Okay.
While we say everything's donated, we do have a cost burden by the city and such. So I want to make sure, is that something that we've seen in the past in our budget on how much is spent from the city on our employees' time? I know it's a great thing for everybody to get involved in stuff. I want to make sure. We've already thanked everybody, and I'll thank them all again if we need to. Thank all of the donations, everything else. There's a significant amount of time consumed by all of you all, and very much appreciated. I want this to continue and such. Is it something we need to monitor and watch as far as our funding or our salaries, our daily salaries paid to do this?
So what I hear you saying, Councilman Bearcat, is I don't have that right now, but I can do some analysis from the project officers, find out who participated, and give you a projected cost of staff time for this most recent event. Would that,
I'm asking as part of our budgets, those kind of things. It's a daily effort put forth by staff. It's just the focus during that week is setting, or those few days is setting up for, and then going out and gathering donations, those kind of things. Is that something we need to be aware of or not in everybody's mind?
I think you want the numbers on how much staff time and dollars are dedicated to the toy drive, and then we as a council can ascertain whether it's worth having city time and money going to something that we all think is a worthy cause, but we just got to make sure that it passes the muster of being fiscally responsible.
Right.
And honestly, I think
Thank you.
the earlier we know that stuff, the earlier we can potentially reach out and try to secure donations and stuff to try to bridge that gap too, so.
absolutely. So staff will take that back, and I'll have the project officers from this most recent one do some analysis so that we can at least have an understanding of what the cost is invested in. We recognize the benefit. I hear you
It's
saying.
a huge benefit.
I hear you
do
saying
not
that
ever
we
want
want to
it
make
go
sure
away,
that,
but
that we are also counting the cost in it so that as good stewards,
yes,
everybody is familiar with the balance.
Yes.
thank you. With that, I'll recommend approval of 7G.
Option 1.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second? I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I've already approved H.
I is the next one.
I told, and I just wanted to really quickly thank Val and Judy for reapplying and continuing on with Parks and Trails. When I saw that we had potentially 3 or 4 commissioners that were potentially not re-upping or didn't have applications in or were thinking about maybe stepping down, I was getting worried, and I'm really glad to see you guys come back and hopefully see the park project through, yeah. But no, just appreciate your guys' time and input and dedication to all that, and glad that you'll be sticking around on the commission, so thank you.
Thank you for polling.
What's that?
Thank you for polling.
Of course.
I agree with your sentiments.
If there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item 7.
Make a motion, and you can make a motion since there aren't that many people here tonight.
Okay.
Second.
I'll make the motion. Who's
Second. Or Dean.
Go ahead, doesn't matter.
Michelle? You get to pick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
7J, the revised, information in front of me, I agree, looks like all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed, it looks good. It resolves any issues that may or may not have arisen, we believe, and it's the right direction.
There's
I believe so.
There's one thing I would like to add, or at least discuss, similar to how we have in a couple of other similar policies. So we had something similar for the PD, recruitment and retention, and also for other similar things like tuition reimbursement, where we have a period of time that
They must stay here
you stay with the city.
or reimburse
Or
us.
if you voluntarily separate, you reimburse within 6 months or something, I think would probably be appropriate on this one. So I'd like to see that added.
What's your time frame?
I just throw out 6 months.
Why 6 months?
I think for like the tuition, I think it was a year.
The dollar figure was higher.
Yeah.
And the duration was higher. It's
Yeah,
12
so I
months.
figured less dollar amount, but I'm not just tied to 6 months if you have a different idea.
Is that if they pay us back, if they leave within 6 months, they pay us back?
Correct.
Why not have it be like 2 years?
In this case, the $1,500 for the recruitment and retention is for 1 year. So they're using it for the year, and then the idea would be that's therefore securing a time frame of what I hear you saying is 6 months or whatever for the city investing. And in this one, it's dealing with, all their different types of wellness to secure. And
Yeah.
It might have the opposite effect of people not wanting to use it as much if if they're not sure what's going to happen in 2 years, and also the difficulty in us tracking it down for 2 years with records.
Is it a challenge?
What?
Is 2 years a challenge?
More than 6 months.
I always like in my job we pay for education, and I always think, well, we run the risk of training people for their next job, and I'm okay with that, because I think the more training and education somebody gets, the better they are for me and my job and my team. And I think that if we pay for their training and education, if they move on in 6 months, then it's not money well spent. But if they move on within maybe 2 years, it may be not money well spent, but they should pay us back if they, if you get an advanced degree that allows you to get a different job, then you should pay us back if it's within 2 years.
an advanced degree, though, would be significantly more than
Significant wage,
$1,500.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying an advanced degree in my situation, anything that allows you to move on. We're investing in people. If they take our investment in people and move on in 6 months, it's not a good investment. It's a good investment for them, not for us.
I think, sir, the thing that they are trying to ask for and what we're trying to address is in the market right now, the scarcity of qualified people to fill our unique positions. We're trying to incentivize them to take care of themselves so that they can do this better. And I do agree with the mayor that this may create a reluctance to sign up for it because of the pressures. This is to create a culture and an environment in which people want to stay here, not that they feel handcuffed to stay here.
Fair enough. Okay.
Well said. Dean, what do you think of the 6-month number?
I'm worried about the administrative time and stuff. We're lean already and those kind of things. I was just wanting to make sure what was written is right. I agree with
Gotcha.
John on if all of a somebody wants to go from a bachelor's to a master's degree and
that is.
they're
a longer
intending
period,
on
yeah.
staying here, that's a whole different contract.
for sure.
And that's something that I want that kind of stuff to happen for my people that are working for me in my company. But I also want that as, I want you to stay. I want you to move into the next role from manager to director, those kind of things that'll help and assist that. I think that's something we put more emphasis on. We want you to stay if we're going to invest in you. In these kind of things, I think it's kind of an ancillary deal. I'm not overly excited about monitoring and stuff. It's have to be something that we would need feedback from. But I also don't want to delay this either. It is something that was and should have been in place before the start of the year, and we're catching up for whatever related issues and such. So
Gotcha.
I'm not, timing isn't big on this amount of money. I don't think we'll lose everybody and end up losing 45 to
Right.
40,000 people all at once. I'm not concerned.
Gotcha. Do you want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve as
Okay.
revised.
Second.
So with, just for clarification, with the additional 6 months language that I had proposed?
Yeah.
Okay. A motion and a second, and potential friendly amendment, and then approving this to go into effect with that language added.
So to clarify, it's approved with adding a commitment of 6 months for dollars, 6 months of staying with the city for any dollars accepted or reimbursement. So it'll be approved, you don't have to bring it back to you
Yeah.
with addendum of language of 6 months.
Perfect. Okay.
I'll be okay with it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Okay, on to, next pulled one was
I pulled 7I.
7I. Did I miss?
And again,
You sure? I pulled 7I and we did it.
you did?
L.
7L.
L.
That's the lowercase L. I gotcha.
H-I-J-K-L, it's a large I.
That looks like an eye.
Yeah. So L, on the cultural assessment, I think it is something that we owe our new city administrator and such. Let's get a feel, let's get things out on the table if there are any things and such, and do this. So I wanted to let you know and everybody else know. I think it's a good thing that is going to be part of this city and the success of not just our city administrator, but everybody else that works in this city to go through this exercise. So
Well said. I completely agree.
Make a motion to approve I.
second,
L, you mean, right?
L.
Good catch. L. Yes.
We'll
Motion.
get through this, guys. Hang on.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ironically, say aye.
Aye.
L.
L. And then that is consent agenda.
We made it.
We made it through that. On to 8, which is planning business. We have a public comment opportunity. If anyone would like to comment on item 8A, which is development flow chart and kind of review of the review process for planning. Looks like we're good there. So Natalie?
Motion to close public.
It was just a public comment opportunity.
We don't close public opportunity.
I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough.
was a request from council for staff to provide a presentation on outline of our development review process. So as a part of that, we thought it would be helpful to create a flow chart as a visual. And this could be put on our website. Right now it's still a draft form, but it could be put on our website. It could be provided as a handout to potential applicants when they have their first meeting with staff. And the staff report provides a lot more context in how this plays out with our 60-day review period and other constraints in a more detailed fashion. That could certainly be a companion piece with the flow chart. For the purpose of the presentation, we thought it would be helpful if I, instead of regurgitating the staff report, provided you with some case studies and how it would play out with the flow chart. So hopefully you have a copy at the dais, since it's a little hard to see all of it on the screen. But basically, the first case study that we thought we would walk through is one of our easier applications, something more typical that a lot of our property owners could encounter, a conditional use permit for an accessory structure. It was kind of what we were thinking. And, so for the purposes of this exercise, the property owner would like a conditional use permit. He's in our rural residential area. He wants to bypass the square footage that he gets by right, and he has 10 acres, so he can do that. And he also wants to do a sidewall height limit. He wants to exceed that. He's already part of a recent subdivision, so there was already a wetland delineation completed a couple years ago. So basically, the first step for him would be to, if I can figure out, why is it not showing up on the screen? I don't know. That's funny. So the first step would be to really gather the information, and that can be done online through our city code. The city code is not in the friendliest format, so they're also more than encouraged to reach out to the planning department. Either myself or the planning technician, Dwight, are able to provide some basic information as to what zoning district they're in, what options they have in terms of square footage they could do for an accessory building, and provide just that general basic information as what they're allowed to do. And then if they have more complicated questions, or they have a specific idea that they would like to walk through with staff, then we enter into a pre-application meeting. We get that scheduled. And sometimes engineering is at those meetings, and definitely planning. But for something like this, engineering may not be at that meeting. It depends on exactly what they're hoping to do. If they have some wetland questions, engineering could definitely be there, or wetland or grading questions. At that pre-application meeting, we help identify what additional pre-application processes may be required. This is pretty straightforward. He already has a wetland delineation. He doesn't need to have any other additional side reviews like a concept plan, because he's not requesting any kind of flexibility. So we can move on to submitting a formal land use application. Once we receive that, we do a completeness review. Staff does this within 15 business days of receiving the application.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Are all these boxes, do they have time?
So the staff report does try to provide some basic timelines. I would say there really isn't a time threshold until we get to submit a formal land application. Then we kind of get into where there might be some timelines involved. The process where they're gathering information and they schedule a meeting, nothing formal has been submitted. There really isn't a timeline tied to that. If they'd have pre-application processes like a concept plan, an EAW, feasibility study, that does have a timeline associated with it. But for this application, there wouldn't be any kind of a timeline until they submitted a formal land use application.
Can I ask more questions? Sure. What colors of the box are City of Corcoran issues or concerns?
So really, the only time it gets to external, I have external as the gray, so the city distributes to external agencies, and so that's the gray box there is just an example of the agencies that we most commonly distribute the application to. Down below, when we get to conditions of approval, the applicant will have to sometimes submit to an external agency for review and approval, such as the watershed. So again, I list out some of the agencies that is most common that they would have to also have some kind of review process with.
Yeah.
The rest of it is all City of Corcoran.
Okay. Is there a timeline for all this?
It differs from applicant to applicant.
Yeah.
This was an attempt to take a very complicated process and provide a rudimentary understanding for anyone who picks it up, so they at least have a reference point.
Yep.
They can understand where they are in the process, and then staff
sure.
communicates the timelines.
Yes.
If it was like
Yeah.
a subdivision and it's,
Which is the next case study.
Complete.
Yeah.
then there would be the 60-day with possible extension.
Oh, yep. I'm just asking on, some people have asked for like a one-pager that shows it'll take however much time.
If I can, some of the we can't answer that because it depends on the data that's submitted to the city too. So if we have a grading plan that lacks detail, we can't control when we'll get that detail. So they could come in, meet with us.
Yep.
We could give them comments, but we can't control.
Can maybe give them an
How-
idea once it's
Yeah.
determined complete.
So where's the grading plan on this?
It wraps up into a lot of this because a grading plan functions as a development site plan, so it gets very nuanced. But what I'm saying is that what's not reflected on here is the level of detail on their submittals, the pace that they submit back, the timeliness of their responses. That's unable for us to control, so there's only certain windows statutorily where we can, where there is like a 60 or 90 day.
Fair enough.
But
So-
in the other ones, it's based on data and what we submit them. It's a back and forth exchange until the data is complete.
So if someone comes to us and says, hey man, the city is so slow on our application process, would I be able to say, here's the chart, you're here, we need this, and then once we receive this, then you can proceed? Is that?
It would take a staff feedback because in some cases they might be coming to you because they don't like that they have to do something.
Fair enough, yep.
And so they're saying,
That's-
I don't want to provide
It's
that
always the
information.
pushback is
Right.
like,
And
and that's why we've asked for this, is like, we can say to somebody, hey, your thing is waiting on this step. And this, we haven't seen this step. Because people will come to us and say, hey, my application was in there 3 months ago and blah, 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 blah. But if we have some sort of architecture on how applications flow through the city process, then we can say, well, let me check, and you're in this blue box, and we need this. So sometimes when people say, I'm here, I'll call Natalie and say, what's going on with this? And they'll say, well, Natalie will say, well, they're here. It's really friendly if we have a process and all that stuff, right? So, I think that's what the impetus for having this flow chart is when people come to us and say, process is convoluted, or where am I, or that kind of stuff, right?
I think it also helps us to keep people on track. You know, as they get discouraged and they get bogged down, they see where they are and what lies ahead, and then they can ask staff, timeline, when you ask
100%.
timeline things.
Totally.
So this is a starting point. This definitely doesn't cover comprehensively because there isn't a single development. The reason Natalie pulled some case studies, even the ones that she's talking about with that individual property owner, every single one of those has been very nuanced. There's
all
no
nuanced.
textbook play. Every single one, we're providing customer service to the unique requirements of a particular
That's
customer.
why there are 52 boxes on there, I guess.
Yeah, it's very complex.
Yeah.
And so,
Can I hear the next one, Natalie? It's a lot of
well,
work.
Is it helpful though? Because I guess I don't know, would it be helpful to just go over your questions with what's in front of us instead of walking through it? Because I guess I don't know if it's proving to be helpful.
So the other case study that I asked her for, the two most common things were individual property owners that are asking for different building requirements on their property. And then the other one was residential development. There's obviously a lot of that going on. One thing that I did want to point out that Natalie added, the dollar figures, this is a question that comes up. When do people have to have dollars submitted in the process? And so the dollar figures are in the boxes. Those boxes that do not have dollar figures, may have costs associated with them, but it's not collected
Yeah, we
at that
don't
time.
see that.
Yeah, it was updated in this one. Apologize that that's not that.
Yeah, so it would be at the, so there's a dollar sign at the pre-application process
go.
box.
So, right here.
Because depending on what needs to happen at that, it's possible we would, if they have additional meetings that they would like to have us sit on, if that could be a pre-application escrow we need to take, concept plans, environmental review studies, feasibility studies, all of those are gonna have escrows that are gonna be based on the scope of the project.
No, Natalie, those are all in the fee schedule, correct?
For the most part, yes. So the concept plan, that's all fee schedule. EAWs are gonna be based on the scope of the project. So that's not, I think there's a 5,000 minimum in the fee schedule with the note
Because of the
that it's
impact
going
and
to
size of the
differ.
development and
Yeah,
all those
so
things, it
It was
goes
not a
up.
$5,000 escrow we took for
Yeah.
the Hope EAW, for example, because that was a massive project. So it really depends on what exactly we need to do and what they're proposing. And then, same with the feasibility study. I think, again, we have a line item in our fee schedule, but there's a note that it depends on the scope of the project.
Is there ever an issue where that fee was set and paid, and then all of a sudden we come back and say, we're gonna need more for that?
So typically, I don't see that at this stage, but yeah, so we have, it's an escrow deposit. And so there is a sign, there's a language in our land use application that they sign off on that says it's possible that we're going to need more because it depends on the time and costs associated with your application to directly process this. I'm sorry, it's the direct cost of processing this application that the escrow pays towards. Ideally, we try to establish these escrows based on experience that says this is how much it's going to cost. However, sometimes it's a really easy application and we have a refund for you. Other times, it's really complex or we have to do a lot of hand-holding, so there's a lot of staff time that gets exhausted through it, and we're going to need to take additional escrow.
So then, being reasonable, in my mind, means it's going to cost money.
It's going to cost money.
We get people saying, we just get nickel to dime to death by your planning department. We're getting nickel to dime to death from this stuff, and it's like, I think it's an appropriate amount of money and such, and it goes off of what you just said, past experiences and developments and stuff. These are as best guess numbers as possible, but there is a chance it's going to be more, so.
Yes, and there's a chance it's going to be less.
Yeah.
This is just our starting point.
Yeah.
This is where we're going to start, and then until you prove otherwise, we'll go from there. And that's kind of development in a nutshell. We'll start here, and then we'll have to kind of figure out where we're going as we
When
go.
we asked for this, I
Yeah.
thought this would be 2 or 3 pages long of a flow chart.
Well, it is. Because
It could
look
be
at
if you
staff
made the
report
boxes
that
bigger.
explains each box. It is an
I'm glad you
8-page staff
abbreviated it
report.
to this point.
It's a good thing
And
we can show, and
it's-
then
it's-
if they want detail, we can show them that.
And what I want everybody to know, developers, public and stuff, there's a lot of this stuff that is our responsibility as a city, but then there's a lot of other input from Hennepin County Watershed, all of these people that has the effect on how many more boxes are added. So if it was easy,
Everyone would do it.
we would be a lot quicker at doing what we're doing, but we have to dot all of our i's and cross all of our t's. So that's number one. And then the other question I had was, how much do we mess things up by saying, and I think we've done this a couple of times, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, where we asked for a napkin plan. Is
Yeah.
that something we are
So that's
messing
what
with
the
you?
pre-application meeting is. That's like, this is what I'm thinking, how out of the box is this? And then we're like, okay, so this is what our code is.
Yep.
And then we figure out what the sticking points are. If they have, like, well, no, I absolutely cannot do it that way. This is the way I must do it to make this project worthwhile, then that's when we bring it to you as a concept plan. And then we can clearly outline the ideas of why it's not going to work. And it gives us that chance.
The conversations that bother me is they say, well, we have a plan, but the council and the mayor doesn't get to see it. The holes are shot in it, everything is done before it comes to us.
Anyone can submit a concept plan. I
But what I'm
recommend concept
saying
plans left
is
and right.
you deal with this every day.
Yeah.
We are getting, we're dancing through, we're having to pay more and more to get looked at before it even gets to use the council,
Yeah,
and then all of a
it's-
sudden you all can just say, no, that's not gonna work. and they don't get anything back.
Can I give an example to that?
Please, go ahead.
So we had somebody come through and they wanted rental apartments in something, it doesn't matter. And they came and had a bang out presentation and I'm like, I don't want rental apartments here. And
It was even a gated community, right?
yeah, it was something we didn't like. And we said no. It was 5-0. We didn't want it. And what I had said to them is like, why don't you come to us with a napkin proposal? And if you have some concept that maybe that we had never seen before, or maybe we had seen before, come to us and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you guys think about that? And then if all of us say, no, that's a terrible idea, you don't have to spend any amount of time on any of these boxes. You just go home. And so what I would add, and it's not formal, I would add a big box and say, napkin idea, your idea to council. If council thinks your idea sucks, then you don't have to do any of the 52 boxes. You can go home and you don't have to spend any of the tens of thousands of dollars that you thought that rental apartments are a good idea in Corcoran, which you all thought was terrible.
You know what we're saying,
No,
let her say something.
So,
Hang on, let me finish.
Uh-oh.
I want to have people,
Yes.
I want to put something in here that's optional. Come to council and ask if council thinks it's a good idea.
If I could, and then I will let Natalie talk. So we've talked a lot about this idea. I think we would be doing you a disservice as staff if every single person that has a napkin idea is allowed to walk up and take your time. Because someone also has to think about the second and third order effects of that idea. So if you walk through the block, you go pre-application meeting. That just sets the stage. It orients whoever it is that has an idea to what the process will be and discusses some of it. And then there's the pre-application, and then they can come here. So it's really like the third block.
So you think we'd have 25 people a meeting coming here with an idea of putting like a Dairy
I think that
Queen
they don't
on-
have a framework of what's going to be required. And so if they take up a lot of time to do that, I think we have a responsibility to set the stage.
Got it.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
getting
fair.
that- yeah.
That's totally fair.
Natalie, do you want to?
we've had this discussion several times. So I'm not opposed to what you said. If we want to have a napkin idea, and before we do anything, before they even have a meeting with staff, they come to council to see with you if that's going to be okay. And you're saying no staff time goes into that, that's fine. The problem with that is we actually have had that happen where someone's like, what should we do with this parcel of land? We want to talk to council. And ultimately the direction was, well, sit down with staff.
Oh,
And
so you guys have people that come to you and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible idea. Council's never gonna go for it.
We'd say based on previous experience, they have
Yeah.
not gone for this. If you would like to have that discussion with them, then the next
So
process
then I
has to
would
be a concept
caveat,
plan.
okay, fair.
And then that allows
Yes.
us to review all the issues so that you know all the questions up front rather than one question being asked
you,
and
thank
that
you,
might
thank
not
you.
even be the right questions.
So what we've had ideas before that are ideas that maybe you guys were okay with, but are new or different or whatever. And then people will say, well, we've put all this time in with city staff and we hate it as a council. How do we then in this chart account for the ideas that may pass muster, but like are gonna involve hundreds or tens of thousands of dollars that pass? You know that we've had people come in here with ideas that they're on like step 10 and we're like, wow, this idea is terrible. And they all of a sudden have this grand plan with pictures from the freeway and we're like, this is awful.
So
Like, how do
I
we
would
account
say
for
the
that?
only time it doesn't come to you as a concept plan is if they're only, we tend to recommend concept plans if there's any question of discretion, if there's any question of policy.
Yes.
Or if it's gonna require an environmental study, they're gonna need to have a concept plan, because that's how that gets kicked off. You guys make a motion to start the environmental study.
Yeah.
So the only time you're gonna see something that hasn't been, already had that concept plan review, that maybe has already gone through the public hearing and city council review, is when it's already a use we have called out in our zoning code as either interim, conditional, and it appears that they're going to meet those standards. Maybe one variance.
Wouldn't it
Am
be
I-
nice?
am I covering your
Wouldn't that
stuff?
be nice if you could have that?
Have what?
That everything is per what our plan is?
Oh, right, like we have a lot of concept plans. We review a lot of
What
things
were
as
you
concept
Am I
plans.
covering
Sorry.
your stuff here when I interrupted you and then it went
Nope,
out?
you're doing fine.
So I would, as a secondary thing, make people sign off on this chart and say,
Yeah,
oh, I got this, I reviewed it, because every time somebody wants to do something in this town, we get calls and say, hey, we're not doing this, we're not getting this done. And then we have to, I call you and I say, hey, they're trying to do this, what's going on?
Most times when you call me, it's because they haven't done anything.
That's what I'm saying.
that's what
Let's
that's
sign
what
the
I want to
thing.
hear.
Yeah.
And then I can
That's
say,
exactly
did
what I
you
wanna
sign
hear.
the thing, Natalie? This is a real, to do anything, people always say too, like, oh, it's a real big pain in the ass to do anything in
Yeah.
Corcoran. And I'm like, oh, try another town. It's hard to do anything in any town.
Absolutely.
Unless you're in BFE, North Dakota, you can build a
Yeah.
building as high as you want, but I need something that I can go to people in our town who say it's really hard to work here, because they all say it's hard to work here, and I say, well, we have to have some architecture. We can't just have you do, like, as much as I'm a libertarian, you can't put a 18-story skyscraper in your front yard. Like, I need to be able to go to people. It's a huge thing for people. They're like, so if we have this thing and we say, what are you trying to do? Here's a 52-block document. Please sign it. It's really hard because it's like trying to get Social Security. It's not the easiest thing in the world. We can get it done, but you got to do it through, and don't call me.
They
Is that
get,
what they signed? Do not call.
Yeah.
I will not call.
Tell me about it, right? All people are asking for is directions.
so they get stuck right here. Natalie and I talked about it. These blocks right here,
Am I lying?
You're-
these 4
You're
blocks
saying
right
very
here,
well, John.
when they hit the incomplete, they either don't submit the complete packet,
Are
meeting
they-
all the requirements, or they only meet part of them.
Yeah.
And they get stuck in this circle right here, and so they're saying, we're not getting anywhere. It's not because staff is holding them up, it's because they're not meeting the requirements that have been outlined to them.
Or they
And so
don't want to, or another
Or they
comment
don't
to
wanna do
make,
it.
I don't want to do it.
No one's trying to be mean.
They're being unreasonable. I don't want to do it.
And so they hit the incomplete, which then shoves it back up, and they get stuck in this loop. And
We are
that-
all trying to make things easier.
Yeah.
This is,
Well, and
we've
I-
asked for this for 2 years. This is awesome. Thank
Love it.
you, thank you, thank you.
So 2 things. I would say that while I think this is great, it still isn't a perfect system, because there's always going to be a complicated situation that it
Yeah,
doesn't
you couldn't
exactly.
make a perfect one.
Yeah, exactly. So so for the purposes of trying to have something that can be a general outline, I think I'm proud of it, but it's still, like, the only concern I have with someone signing off on it is we'll have to make sure the language clearly says that they also understand that there can be a slight deviation
Well, then you need
that's
to,
unforeseeable.
then you need that big box over here.
That's a-
Yeah.
Other things as
So-
necessary, other costs,
Right.
I mean, just that.
Nope.
just
And then
like-
When
the other
I've talked to
thing-
people and I said, have you talked to the city about what it takes to get things done? And I don't think we're being unreasonable. When I talk to people don't say, yeah, I have. And I know what I need to do to get things done. People never say that. They say, but if we have something that we can point to and say, have you looked at our 52 box thing? Which seems like a lot, but it's just what every other city in the metro area expects. Have you looked at it? That'll take a lot of heat off you. A ton of heat off you.
We'll
and
laminate it
Jay
for you.
And everybody.
You're the last person I want frustrated.
Well,
All y'all in the planning group.
There's some areas where, could we simplify the process? Sure, but it would mean changing our zoning code. So could we make it so that people who want to bypass the sidewall height don't need a CUP? Is that an administrative review? Because we don't tend to deny those times of requests, so maybe that's an indication that we don't need that to go to council. Then that would cut this process fairly, I mean, it would cut a significant out of this process.
That's a lot of
So-
work, though, to add all of those things for administrative decisions and
I would have to do
reviews
the
and
review
stuff.
anyway.
You're doing it now.
Yeah, so I'm just saying if there's certain things where it's like, well, it seems like that shouldn't have to enter this process. It seems like that should go into an administrative process. We can have that discussion. There's places
I
where we
love
could
that
easily
idea.
change our code to make things easier, but it's not necessary, but if it's something that needs to go to council review, this is the process.
I love it. Thank you for the conversation.
Yeah.
The last thing I want is frustrated folks and stuff, but it's really hard, not as hard as what you're dealing with, but to get somebody, I've been dealing with them for this long and they aren't helping me, they aren't working with me, and then the next thing, he probably knows the people I talk about. The next thing I say is, let me check with Natalie or Landform and find out where you're at. When I call and, yeah, this is what we need from them, and I'm like, thank you, and I call back and say, why haven't you submitted it? I don't want to do it. Then you're not going to get anywhere, and you end up in the toilet bowl ring of those four.
Make them, so I would ask you, make them sign it.
Yes.
That you read it.
Love it.
I'd say talk to John Thames, see if there's some, like you were mentioning, some language that can be added about.
Yeah, it doesn't hold us accountable to this, but there's
Yes,
something that
it might
deviates
vary,
from it.
and
Yeah.
see if there's a way we can
It's
get
like,
that to develop.
give them a,
Development
Like-
application.
I love when things are best case scenario, but yeah, my concern is just like, satisfy conditions of approval. Technically, there's some conditions of approval. The preliminary plat application needs to get before you can submit a formal plat. Is that on here? Or I'm sorry, final plat. Is that on here? No, because it's too cumbersome to make that work, but that's the general idea is.
we're trying to make your life easier, Natalie.
Say, talk to John, work with Jay and John Thames on wordsmithing, adding a couple areas,
So just be a
and
part
then
of
trying to
when
add
you
it
use
to the development
applications,
application.
Okay.
And any other comments from council for staff? We understand we'll
It's a lot of
incorporate
work.
something.
You've done
Thank
a
you,
lot in
Natalie.
a very short
This
period
is-
of time.
This is awesome.
And the backup documents, if you look at those, is really how the sausage is made. That's where the details are. This is the overview.
So I would add a couple things, or one thing. Look through here, and there are things that the city council, Corcoran, and you guys, and us guys have control over. They're all in blue, right?
Well, so the gray is where there's stuff that's out of our control.
Yep, fair enough.
Everything else is us.
Fair enough.
I mean.
The wet,
for the
hold
most
on.
part, So,
The wetland delineation process is not our deal.
well, so that's what I was about to say, it technically is us, it's
Take
our.
the stuff
we
that's
have a
not-
wetland specialist.
If John Bodema and Natalie can impact something, make it blue. If someone else can impact it, don't make it blue. Because how many times, Kevin, have you bumped up to somebody with a wetland thing? A bazillion.
We
And
are
so
the
have I.
LGU though, so that's where I was, so
But they're not our rules and laws and code.
but the wetland delineation is us, like we process that.
We process it, but they're not our rules.
How about making?
How many times have we bumped up to, no, they gotta be gray. They're not we don't
Let's
make
just
the
say
wetland rules.
delineation.
So it's a different color of blue, so it does differentiate up here.
We move it through someone else's code.
But it requires a staff action.
Yeah.
So that's why it's blue, but it's a different shade of blue because it's a different type of staff action.
Yeah, and then
The stuff we can control, we can be accountable for,
And those things are all like blue.
that's it.
Well, but
Be a little
it's,
careful, because like the 1599 state statute really dictates the planning process for timelines.
Yeah, I would say that there's,
So like
so
everything kind of derives from, there's a lot of this that derives from other agencies. We
Yeah.
have a little bit of control in how we lay it out.
I don't wanna,
I think the easiest
Dig
way to
up
explain
dead
it is we
horse,
have
but-
these gray boxes that talk about when something's gonna go to an external agency. It's not our consultants, it's
Yeah.
not our staff that's going to be reviewing and making the final decision with those aspects.
Because watershed's also here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when
And-
someone
and-
says to us, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
If we can control it and it's blue, then we have a conversation and we're beholden to the person.
I would say not great, because everything that's not great is within our domain. We either have our.
You know what I'm
So
saying?
purple is the commissions, it's the bodies that are
Browns
providing
are building
feedback?
permits, and that's our staff as well as Metro West. So I would say everything that's not gray is our domain. Whether or not there's state statutes that we're also abiding by is a
Try-
different
so-
question.
Let's try to make that clear in this, if possible. So when we defend our actions, it's not a city code that we have to defend, it's a process.
So we'll go back and confirm the colors, was what I understand you
Something
said.
like that, I don't know, how many calls do you get about our process?
Plenty.
Yeah. I'm happy to
this will help.
defend, I'm happy to defend us. I always say, tell me what's going on, I go to the city, here's what we can control. We can't control everything. This is what we can control. That box chart that you signed off on clearly delineates what you can complain to us about. Something like that.
I hear you. I hear it. I think it's just too woven together.
we aren't
I mean,
gonna make it
for
that simple,
the
huh?
MS4 stormwater permit is dictated to us because we're 5,000 people. And when they they give us the permit,
Yeah.
they make us update our code. So it's in our code, but it's a
But it's
mandate of the permit.
Yeah.
Just like the statutory limits for how fast you review a plan.
Yeah, but
So
no
it's
one,
like they're all woven into almost every one of these. Would be like a box around the outside. There's very few that's just independently.
fair enough. Then delineate that. No one cares about what you just said. They want their project completed, and how many times have I went out and said, we approve it, and but we're beholden to some other entity. We can't hide behind some other entity unless we delineate it. You know what I'm saying?
I do think in the details, staff's tried, and then as we have meetings with them, they are being explained why and how the things
Yeah.
happen. They may not like it, and to your point, we may not like it. But with these other entities that are state statutes, what we tried to outline here is when it's in our wheelhouse and our fingerprints are on it, we wanted to make sure that people understand our touch. When it leaves our entity and it goes to the developer, the requester, or an outside entity for their feedback, it looks different.
It's the same like when we have that Hennepin County requirement that we have to have the box here where people can put their organics or whatever. Like we can say, I don't like to do it, we have to do it. I don't like it, we have to do it. And we can explain it that way. It's not a Corcoran policy, it's a Hennepin County policy. And
I think we can include that in the details of the language in the future. I think that would be very difficult and make it even an already complex 52 box thing even more complex.
well,
To
yeah,
the point that Kevin made about the interweaving of,
When I read everything in your document, that explains everything crystal clear to me.
Well, and that was
It
what I first tried to do,
really
was try to
does.
create a flow chart that had that, and everyone told me that that was not gonna work. And
But I mean, it-
No, but I would
disagree with them.
attach this as an addendum to this.
Yes.
So
Well,
people
I'm
have
thinking
questions,
if we're
they
gonna have
can.
people sign off on it, it'd be part of the land use application, so I don't think it would make sense to have that be part of the land use application, but we make it accessible.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying, this
Could reference it somewhere, say,
explains
ask them.
many things for me. And again, a lot of the people that have been calling and saying, staff is impossible, staff is impossible. I can now ask them, what do you owe staff? Did you get a response back in an email stating, these are the things that aren't checked on the checklist, this is what we need from you? Yeah, I don't wanna do them. And like John said, and I probably use it sometime when I get so frustrated, then go find someplace else to build. It gets that crazy for us. I don't know how you do what you do every day. I appreciate you very, very much.
I second that.
But I wanna help. I don't want all of a sudden me saying something and they call you up and boy, that Barron Camp counselor is a jerk.
Well, they might say that anyways.
Because I'll probably agree with some of the folks that I've talked to. It's like talking to the wall on some of these folks. You have to do these things. You have to hit as many boxes as you can, or I hate to say it, can this be modified into a punch list and start top to bottom instead of a flow chart?
Well, we do
You know what I
have
mean?
a process
You've got that
guide
too,
for each
don't you?
application type that talks about the supporting documentation, and that we always hand out to.
You guys got it then.
I think what I understand is we'll talk to Thames, and I liken it to if you go to the doctor's office, they give you, and you sign, yep, I received a copy of this rules for the medical, whatever. We can do that with this. I received a copy of the process and the details related to it. I think that something like that will probably be helpful and work.
HIPAA. It's like a HIPAA agreement.
There you go. Okay.
Thank you so
Is
much.
this helpful to you, Natalie? I think it seems like I think we're collaborating.
She's winding up a
What's
power
really,
cord
well, no,
ready
I'm
to
sorry,
throw it at
it's
us.
just, my toddler's actually in the next room.
Oh,
One of
okay.
my coworkers
I'm just
graciously
wanting to
is
make
watching
sure I
it.
don't need to dodge it.
No, the issue.
We're trying to cover you.
No, I think it's interesting because it's, to me, I'm concerned on what this isn't capturing and the fact that, like, does this oversimplify the process and how does this fully capture everything and where's it going to cause more confusion? Because someone who has a CUP, like, oh, I have to go to Parks and Trails Commission, and it's like, well, no, that part you would skip. So it's still not a perfect thing. But what I found really interesting is there was a comment made like, I have no idea what you do. And now I finally have an idea.
It's good. Thank you.
Who said that? Did you say that, John?
No,
I didn't
CD
say
said
that.
it. CD is just like, I have
know
no
what
idea
Natalie
what you
does.
do, and now I finally have some kind of an understanding.
this is great.
So.
Yes, this is what we've been asking for like 4 years now. Thank you.
You did good.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay,
Okay.
too, for driving it. Anybody else that's participated, thank you.
It was Natalie. She made it happen.
Alrighty.
Beautiful.
Natalie escaped and
Yes.
get to where you want.
Good night.
You too. And then we'll move on to item 9, which is unfinished business. We have a public comment opportunity if anyone would like to speak for item 9A, which is the 2022 audit report.
We welcome Andy Berg from
Yes,
Abdo, who assisted us with our audit, and he will give us a presentation on that.
All
right,
speakers, I
thank
think
you.
go right ahead.
All right. Like Jay said, Andy Berg with Abdo here to present the 22 audit. So as a number guy, listen to that conversation before you. Natalie has 11 more boxes she can put on there because there are only 41, 52 on the flow chart.
Oh, he was counting everything.
She has room to move on that. So Jay, I don't know who's flipping it on the next slide. What I'll cover today is the results of our audit, and then we'll look at some historical information, mainly 3 years, starting with the general fund, looking at your other governmental funds, your special revenue funds, capital project, debt service. Move on to your enterprise funds, your water and sewer funds, and then look at some KPIs over a 3-year period too, compared to other cities of similar size, and then throughout the state, and then also all the cities in Henry County. So the end result of our audit is that we issue an opinion on your financial statements. We issued a modified or clean opinion. As part of that, we also look at the city's internal controls. We don't test them and issue an opinion on effectiveness, but there are a few internal control findings that we'll talk about on the next slide. As part of the audit, we also test Minnesota legal compliance, about 7 different areas. The state auditor has us test and clean report on Minnesota legal compliance. On the next slide, there were 3 findings that were reported. I know that they're all in the works to be cleared up, so happy to report that the city staff are working to clean that up. I'll cover briefly. There were some material audit adjustments that we had to make as part of our audit process to get the numbers correct. Escrow tracking, we see some improvement there, mainly tracking those individually, a number of different ways there, so the city's put in a process into work on that. And then timely bank reconciliations. Important from a control standpoint to get those done timely. If there are errors or irregularities, notice so you can follow up with those. So moving on to the general fund, here we give you a 5-year trend of your ending general fund balance, unassigned fund balance, indicated by that black line. We give you your budget, indicated by the orange line, and then we compare the ending fund balance to your next year's budget. You do have a city policy where you want that to be maintained at a minimum balance of 35%. You'll see over the 5 years presented there. You're really in compliance with that policy, ranging anywhere from the 34% that you're at the end of this year, up to 41% last year. So the biggest change this year, bringing that down to that 34, 35% was the transfers out that you did for future capital. If we look at the activity during the year in the general fund, here we give you a comparison of your final budget to actual amounts, starting with your revenues, expenditures, and then the other financing sources. So revenues and expenditures, really small variance, real close to budget, 180,000 over in revenue, and expenditures 66,000 under. So revenues over expenditures about 181,000. Transfers in from other funds about 449,000, and then you transferred out just under 1.2 million. So the bulk of that went into other capital funds, which we'll see that was over budget by about 800,000 approved by council. So total fund balance decreased about 500,000. If we look at your revenue and expenditures over the last 3 years by category, really all these areas for the most part follow that increase in budget that we saw on the first slide. The first graph there is your revenue by source. So as you know, the bulk of your revenue comes from property taxes. The 3-year trend there is increasing. Again, like I mentioned, in comparison to your budget too. There was some fluctuation in the intergovernmental. You go back to 2020, you'll see the orange bar was a little higher there. That was some of the COVID, the CARES money they received that year. And then the right graph, there's your expenditures. The biggest area of spending there is public safety, followed by your public works. So the next slide, we list your special revenue funds, giving you a comparison of 21 to 22. Total fund balance increased about 44,000. You have a number of different funds here. The majority of them are restricted, indicated in that graph below, and that restricted fund balance has been increasing. So these are external restrictions where you have to spend them on those specific purposes. There is a portion of that that's been committed internally. That amounts remain fairly consistent over the 3-year period. Now this next slide is your capital projects funds. So this is where the bulk of that approximately $1 million was transferred in from the general fund. Here you have total fund balance ending at about 6.4 million, increase of 3 billion, with the bulk of that coming from the transfer and developer related. The largest funds there are the top 2 funds, your park fund, the park capital fund with ending fund balance of about 3.3 million. That's a mixture of restricted and committed, so your park dedication fees that come in are restricted for certain park expenditures. If we look down below, the capital equipment certificate, that one has a fairly significant balance of about just over 1 million. That's also restricted under those equipment certificates that were issued. And then you have a few other project-related ones that are restricted. So looking at that graph, you can see the bulk of the money in your capital project funds are restricted for specific purposes, with the majority of that being in the park fund. The next slide will give you a table of your bonds and debt outstanding. So in total, you have about 8.8 million. going out to about 2038 is the longest one there. Total interest payments over the term of those bonds, about 1.2 million. We do give you a 10-year future principal and interest payment. As some of those fall off, getting out into 2028, those debt service requirements decrease. Anytime you have the debt service, we do recommend that the city continue to monitor the sources to pay that debt so you meet your principal and interest payments. Your 2016A fund does have a deficit, about cash of $365,000. The bonds remaining there, $1.5 million. So that one we recommend you pay particular attention to. Make sure you have a plan to pay that out, or to have the sources come in to pay the annual principal and interest payments. The next two slides are your enterprise funds, so your water and sewer. With these, we give you two graphs over a 4-year history. The top one's cash flow from operations. The bottom one is the cash balance. So with both water and sewer funds, you have been generating sufficient cash from operations indicated by the operating receipts, the yellow portion of that bar, higher than the operating disbursements, the black portion. The orange portion is the connection fees. So with the development happening in the city, it receives significant connection fees. That's really what's contributed to the increase in cash when we look at the bottom graph. So the water fund increased up to 4.1 million, up from 3.2 million. On the next slide, similar situation with the sewer fund, with that cash increasing over the 4-year period, ending at about 2.8 million. The biggest factor here is the connection fees. Now with all those funds combined, on this slide we give you a 3-year comparison of your cash and investments. You'll see back in 2021 you're at about 18.8 million, a little bit of a decrease in 2020, and then increasing to 21.3 million in 2022.
So what's going on there? 2021, 2020, 2022, is that in bad order?
That's a good question. That's in bad order. My guess is that's the dates are just mixed up there. So,
Which one is right?
good question. So I'll check those dates and the years and get those fixed. But the ending number in 2022, 21.3 million cash and investments, made up by those different fund types that we talked about. Pretty much spread between the
Entirely.
It's the whole thing is out of order.
So the 15 million should have been in 2020, but on the other side of
Okay.
2021.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Sorry, discontinue.
Sorry about that. We'll get you an updated slide here, so those are in
No worries.
order. The other thing in 22, just pointed out the different areas where that cash is. We talked about the general fund, so it's really split between the general fund, your capital project funds, yellow, and then the enterprise funds, the green portion at the top bar. So moving into some key performance indicators. These first two here are related to your property taxes. The one on the left looking at your tax rate, consistent over the 4 years presented, right in line with that peer group, under the city's 4th class throughout the state, a little bit over in Hennepin County, and then your taxes per capita remaining fairly consistent, similar trend to the other cities in Hennepin County. Next slide is debt related. The one on the left is debt per capita. That's going to fluctuate depending on when you issue debt issuances or continue to pay that down, fairly consistent from 21 to 22 without any new debt issuances. And the one on the right there is just comparing your total principal and interest to your total expenditures. On the next slide, we look at some expenditures, key performance indicators in your governmental funds. So this doesn't include your water and sewer funds. Again, just kind of some similar trends in the increase in those current expenditures per capita like we saw. Here giving you a comparison to those peer groups, just a little bit higher, but similar trends. And then the one on the right, the capital expenditures, that's going to fluctuate depending on what type of projects you have going on. So a little more capital activity in 22 and 21 compared to 20. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Which one of those guys are you?
First one.
Oh, okay. Can't tell.
That's before he did our audit.
Then he got the beard.
Is after he-
What's it? Go to the first page, please.
Go to the first.
Yeah.
It's a PDF, so I gotta flip, sorry.
What was the okay, second page. Third. And the fourth. What are these things? Explain to me in layman's terms what these things.
So these are findings that we reported as part of our audit process that we're reporting.
Yep.
First one there is audit entries that weren't detected by city staff that we found as part of the audit process. So we're required to report those. Second one is
So, a little more detail on that one.
so that one, I think, was mainly related to some corrections in the escrows and some accounts payable items that we missed.
Okay.
So kind of the year-end reconciliation part of it.
Is that number 2 too?
The number 2 is more the process of the escrow tracking, so it's somewhat related to some of those entries. So there, the escrow in total, you know, is good, but the individual tracking and reconciliation isn't done, and I know Vicki, you might have more to add on, because Vicki's been working with you guys to help with that process, so really it was more of a lack of that individual reconciliation of the escrows through the year.
Okay. Reconciliation of escrows through the year. What does that mean?
So it could be a number of different things. It's kind of somewhat the previous conversation. You get a $50,000 check in and you're applying expenditures to it, not having something that reconciles, hey, what's the balance that we need to bill more for or that we owe?
So somebody sends us 50 grand that we're on the hook for some turn lanes or something, and we're not keeping track of how much we spend on the turn lanes, or is there, what's that?
Could I step in? So escrow related, when we've got development process going on, they give us money for the things that are going to be incurred as a result of the process, so staff time, those other sorts of things. And part of our challenges with escrow is the complexity of developments that have gone on for as long as 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
In different phases. And so we're in the process right now of cleaning that up. But what Andy's identified through the audit is that our process is complex, and they're recommending that we make it simpler.
Okay.
And that's what we're doing.
Fair enough, okay. And then the timely bank reconciliations, what's that in layman's terms?
So that's just reconciling your internal records to your cash and investments, and that should really be done the following month after. It all kind of started way prior to 22 and your conversion to your new system, and I think there are issues with that, and they weren't done timely, and I believe currently now too, behind in the 2023 months. So that's really just ensuring that everything that you recorded agrees to what the bank says in time was to the date.
What about 2021? Did we find any audit stuff?
I don't believe that was a finding in 2021.
Okay.
The escrow one, that, I don't think that was in there before, but if I go back in history, I think we've had that in there years ago.
Okay. Can we say that these things started in 2022, or are we only saying that we found these in 2022?
The timely, I think the material audit one for sure is 2022. The escrow tracking, there were probably pieces of it that might have started before that. that it became more of an issue. The timely bank recs is, started in, like I said, I think through the whole conversion of the financial software.
When was the software conversion?
2022.
Okay.
Yeah, I think January.
Is it a conversion issue? Anyone that converted the software in 2022, did they have the same issue?
Yeah, you can.
Would you like me to stand or can I just speak to?
If you could stand just so we can get you on the microphone, it'd be
Yeah.
helpful.
So just in general, what I.
This is Vicki Holthouse. She is working as a finance manager from AppDev.
Introducing myself formally in just a little bit here, but what I can speak to in general is anytime you have a new system integration, it changes your business processes. So how payments from utility billing settle to the GL, how staff, records daily deposits, it changes up all of your business processes. And so it can take some time to get new process and new reconciliation systems in play. And so I would say just generally, that's probably been the biggest trigger of the challenge. But what I have seen is progress in that direction, right? So I think that staff has good systems in place. We're engaging and understanding that system. And so to the point that was made earlier, I see resolution coming in the course of the next year through 2023 and 2024 audits around that area. But generally speaking, a new system conversion just throws all of your business processes out of order. Does that help?
Well, how many business transitions have you made in that from one process to another?
Could you restate the question maybe in a different way?
We said that the reason why we had some issues is that we changed some processes or software or something.
Sure. Yeah, the city purchased new software. You converted from Banyan Data Systems, right, to BSNA, which is a great and very robust software, and it's going to be much more customer-centric as you move forward. But HR changed, utility billing changed, cash receipting changed, the solution that you use for planning and zoning changed. So really,
Fair enough.
honestly, most of
Yep.
the departments were affected by this.
So we've changed software in other places in our business, in my business, whatever. Do they fail their audit every time they change software? That's the question. Is it?
So I do want to say we did not fail the audit.
Do
We
they
we
have
had a clean
audit
opinion.
issues? If, you're saying why we failed or why there are audit findings. Is it always when you change software that the audit doesn't go well? Is it normal? Does every time somebody changes a software, do they have audit findings?
No, and so we're oversimplifying by saying that that's probably that's likely one cause of the solution. It's certainly it could likely be more complex than that. I'm just offering that process in and of itself impacted a lot of different things. But no, not every community that goes through a software conversion is going to experience challenges with their bank reconciliation process.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and were we at the end of your presentation, or did you have more? I
That
remember.
was
If you guys have more comments, questions,
Any more questions?
or if you happen to go through the financial statements, I'm happy to take any questions on those too. But the presentation was intended to summarize any of the financial results.
Might be too early to ask this. So this is for 2022. What are the expectations to complete the 2023 audit? I've been up here 3 years, and it always seems our audits have been for the previous year towards the third or fourth quarter of the following year. It has seemed like that. Do you guys?
So
probably
no, what I'm
have-
shaking my head to, sir, is
Yeah.
that this year, I'm happy we're on track so that we'll begin preliminary work in April. We should do our final audit in May, and we should meet statutory reporting requirements in June. And we expect that these concerns from material findings should all be resolved in the 2023 audit, and we should have a clean opinion. That's what we're expecting, based on the progress that we're making to date.
Must be, because she's smiling. So it's been a challenge, I assume.
Maybe she's just
And,
nice.
She could be just nice too, but
She's helping solve the problem.
that's what I want, and I think we owe that to all of our citizens in our town, is that this late of a audit and such, with complications that happen and such, may or may not be explainable, but I want going forward that it's done in a timely manner, and it sounds like you've got it to your liking, which,
I believe we're on track, and we also brought experts in to help us because we recognize that these are significant concerns.
yes.
And we wanted to make sure that we resolve them and implement solutions that are going to be long-standing to keep us on track to do what we need to do better.
The other question, the software that we've switched to, has it made things easier? Is it working? Will it be
BSNA is a
working
good
once we get
solution.
familiar with it?
This is the first time I've ever been introduced to BSNA, and so I'm not in it every day. I'm the wrong person to ask in terms of simplicity. And as we continue to grow in our understanding, it's providing what we need.
Okay.
I think
And
compared to what we had, it's a massive.
That was the way it was presented to us. That's why we made the decision to do what we did, so. Okay. It's a learning event. Big one.
In the future, because the council digs into, we're all financially astute, reasonably, all 5 of us. We rely on the audit to make sure that the finances are good. So it's a big piece of what we do. It's in the top 5 of what we do, your audit, to make sure the things that we do financially are positive and good. So thank you for finding things. It's really important that the people from our town know we're good stewards of what we do. And we appreciate that and look forward to working together to figure it out and making it good.
Yep, no, we appreciate that too from the council level, and appreciate that you care and want to make it better too. And we want to get the audit done on time, and I think the last couple of years it's been late, but prior to that, I think Corcoran has a good history. You have a history of some good financial numbers like going over, so I think you're on the right track to get those corrections.
When we go to meetings for city officials, you guys present. There are a bunch of accountants and people we can pick as our audit people. And you guys do a lot of work for a lot of cities. This is what we need you for, is to hold us in check and make sure that to our town people that we're doing the right thing financially. If we lose this, we lose trust and faith in government and our people. And it's big. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I want to say a special thank you to Andy and his team because when I first came on, we weren't on track, and there were some potential implications with Moody's. We communicated about that and some reporting requirements. They changed their schedule and surged for us in order to meet those requirements, and without that help, the second and third order effects could have been really hard. So I just wanted to say a special thank you to him for the hard work that they put in. That wasn't the way that they were planning on doing it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, and Jay, do we need a motion to accept the audit?
Yes, we do.
I will make a motion to accept the 2022 audit
Second.
report as presented.
Second your motion, Mayor.
Second, perfect. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then on to new business. We have items 10A and 10B. We'll have a public comment opportunity if anyone would like to speak on the Northeast Water Supply Infrastructure Improvements Environmental Assessment Notice or the State Pay Equity Report. And not seeing anyone, we'll go straight into 10A.
Am I good?
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. So in late 2022, the city of Corcoran was awarded $3 million as part of the federal community funding program. Because we were already underway with the tower and treatment facility, we elected to use that for the trunk infrastructure portion of the project. So if you remember, that's the pipes that run it from Bellwether, that bring the sewer, water, and raw water main to the water treatment facility and then over to the water tower. Next slide. So as part of that funding, the dollars are actually funded through HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. One of the requirements is it requires to go through an environmental assessment. So this is guided through the NEPA standards. And so what we do is we look through there to understand if there's any environmental impacts from the project required. Through that assessment, it's included in your packet. It's a lengthy document. The review found that the project would have no significant environmental impacts. So our next step here is, with that, the city must review it, accept it, and then publish 3 separate public notices as part of that review. The first one is a notice that there was no significant public impacts. The second one is the intent to release those funds, and the third one is a notice of floodplain and wetland. It's an 8-step process. We had no permanent impacts. It's just we have to notify that that was discovered through the process. It's all put out in one publication, but all 3 of them are published at one time. So tonight, we're requesting of the council to review and approve of that environmental assessment and approve the publishing of public notice. With that, we keep a copy here at City Hall and then go on a 15-day public notice after posting the paper next week. Following that approval, assuming it's approved tonight, we'll work with city administration to submit that environmental assessment. It actually needs to be submitted by a public figure, so the city administrator is actually the one who does the final submitter through the submittal through their online database, and then we can finalize those grant agreements.
Perfect. Any questions? It's a big document, a lot of good.
I have a question.
Go for it.
I apologize to staff. I know last meeting went 40 minutes. This one is not going to go 40 minutes. But we have a potential development happening in that corner too. There have been some talks on overlapping and just if they're gonna do a project there and they're gonna need to pay for something, is there a way to combine efforts and have some more of the money go to getting more public, what you're talking, grant money to.
So I think what you're saying is we're doing the project that needs to be done so that we're not redoing infrastructure. With that, we are putting a portion of that infrastructure in what would be the Hope Church development that's being proposed across the street. If we have to do this because of the timing, if it happens to work out, if they were to do it, we would give them credits through their TLAC fees. And so we're doing the necessary project to get our system up and running. And therefore, because we're doing it, we wouldn't credit those. We may capture full TLAC fees, which are part of our calculations that just go elsewhere in the current system.
Okay.
So yeah, we're putting it in, but we're not doing it because of the development. We're doing it because of the need. It just so happens that we will likely credit less in the future.
Okay, fair enough.
Anything else?
Do we need to approve anything or?
Yeah, I think would be a motion to approve the environmental assessment and direct staff to proceed with the publishing of the required notice.
I'm gonna make a motion for that.
Okay. Second. Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then 10B, state pay equity report. Kathy?
Kathy Hughes, Administrative Services Director. Mayor Council, every 3 years, state law requires public jurisdictions to complete a pay equity report. The last one the City of Corcoran did was in 2021. According to the Minnesota Office of Management and Budget, pay equity is a method of eliminating discrimination against women who are paid less than men for jobs requiring comparable levels of expertise. So the reporting, how it's done, the state provides a spreadsheet. We gather the data. We report via an online port through the budget office. and the calculations are done through a statistical manner that they use. If you move down to 10B1, it shows the compliance report, and it lists it out. First part of it is your general job class information. This part of the report shows the average maximum monthly pay per employee based on male class and female class. The numbers are listed. Male class, the average monthly pay is $7,339, and for females, it's $6,925. So the data that's used is all internal data that's provided based on how our jobs are classed, how they're scored, and the maximum salary for each position. So under section 2, there's a statistical analysis test. In order for the city to pass the test, we have to have an underpayment ratio of 80%. Passing is 80%. We are at 40.33614, which is under the 80% passing score. How this is calculated is it takes the underpayment ratio is a calculation of figuring out the male classes and the female classes, and they make a calculation on the percentage that they're below the predicted pay. And predicted pay is calculated all on internal numbers based on salary on how we're scoring. So you take your, as the calculation shows under section 2AD, your 23.53%, you divide it by your 58.33%, and you get your underpayment ratio of 40.33614. So when you have an underpayment, the state uses another statistical analysis. It's a t-value. They use a chart and a graph. It's the difference between two sample sets to give that variation. Under the t-value results, the city is in compliance. The numbers don't necessarily show that, especially on the other documents that are provided. It also shows the average difference in pay. It's the monthly salary for male jobs versus female jobs. Male jobs are $20 over, female jobs are $40. So if you move to the next couple documents, 10B2.
Can we back up?
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about where are we not succeeding? You said it's 40% something,
Right.
and that's not acceptable. I don't see it on here.
It's the underpayment ratio. It's number 2, the statistical analysis test.
Okay.
I'll show you the next spreadsheet that the state provided us, and we had to input the data. So I worked closely with the management office, and I also worked close with the gentleman who does our job grading.
Yep, so what's that 40, where's that, what's the formula for that?
Yep, so the 40% is where you take the male classes, the percentage below predicted pay, and predicted pay is calculated by averaging the maximum monthly salaries
Okay,
within our city, so it's all internal numbers.
fair enough.
So
Okay.
23.53 divided by 58.33, and you get the 40.33614. Those calculations are all done by the state through the spreadsheet. It's not a manual calculation by the city. Although I did go and verify it, I did double check it by doing it on my calculator.
But, oh, it's 23 divided by 58.
Yes, 23.53 divided by
Okay.
58.33. So then, if you go to the next document, the 10B2, this is the actual data that was provided by the city to the state. This is their spreadsheet. It's a fill-in-the-blank type spreadsheet. If you go to 10B3, this charts out the predicted pay for the city. It's that report. I was told that the statistical piece of it, you have a top number or a top blue diamond and a bottom blue diamond. those pretty much can drop off because they don't necessarily have a second line or a sub-line to create another line for the predicted pay. If you go to the next document.
Where's city council's salary on this chart?
It's on the next page.
It's about
No,
four
they-
squares down to the left.
Keep going. It's there. So this document actually then shows the definition of the charting and how it's done. But when you look at it on paper, there's a couple of outliers because the city has to actually report anyone who works over 68 days in a year. So we had some part-time positions that the pay would throw the chart off as far as where you see the pay difference. For example, your seasonal program coordinator. We are also looking at our wage schedule to help work with this, but that's because the position is a lower paying hourly wage. So when you see that it's getting paid $1,500 less a month, that is not exactly correct. But then you throw out your top one and your bottom one, and the numbers on the right, on the left side, the 29 through 1 or the 1 through 29, those are just line items, and it was done by points. So the job points are done by an external person who's been grading our positions. If you look at this, you will see some discrepancies in the pay differences. My recommendation would be they be looked at. Also look at our job grading system, how it's being done, just to make sure we are in compliance. Because as we grow, these numbers will not necessarily go, the percentage won't go up unless you balance the payout.
Any questions?
Yeah, what's the conclusion?
The conclusion is the state verbally stated we are in compliance by using the t-value, using a statistical analysis to determine if we're in compliance or not. So we are in compliance. If you look at the numbers, we have a very low underpayment ratio, even though they use a statistical analysis to balance it.
What does that mean, in your opinion?
I would disagree that we are in compliance. I feel we should look at this further. We will get a report within the next couple months.
Which piece are we not in
The
compliance with?
compliance report we'll get, because we actually have to post this
Yeah.
stating we're in compliance.
So we have data here. I'm a data guy. We want to make sure as city council that we comply with what is expected of us. We rely on data to give us, just like in Abdo, they come to us and say, hey, your data is out of line. And then we might ask the city, is what Abdo telling us accurate? If it's not accurate, then we have to fight for that. Just like the police department might say, what we need to submit formally is X. We disagree with that. We need to fight for that formally. So we rely on something to make a determination as to whether or not we're in compliance with the state pay equity. And the report says that we're in compliance. If you disagree with that, we got to fight for that. What's the thing? What's the rub? Where are we wrong? What do we need to do?
I would recommend possibly a work session or more conversation at least about how our grading is being done, the actual system that's being used. Are we up to date to this day on how this is being calculated? Just to make sure we are doing what we should do. scoring, that should be looked at. Because when you look at the chart, there is pay difference. What does this exactly mean? It needs to be looked at first. Do we need a full compensation study? That's a very costly ask.
Yeah.
We have not had one done here, maybe in the manner it should be done. So that would be something for the future for the city.
What do we use for a system? I don't know.
As far as our grading right now, we use an external source, an individual that does them.
Is it a system or just a guy?
He uses a true
He does a
site
professional.
system. It was something that was developed many years ago.
What does his system compare to with, I don't know how many other cities he does this for? Are the numbers the same, or am I saying it right?
Different strategies, so what Kathy's saying is that system is a system that's been used for a while. There are other systems out there that have perhaps changed
Okay.
because of some of the things that have happened in our world.
Well-
Just things evolve. And so I'm not familiar personally with the True Sight system.
So what I was gonna say was, the system that's being used right now, I would disagree that it's comparing apples to apples. When you have X on one side and Y on the other, and you have them meet in the middle, there's a lot of personal opinion being given as to the scoring. Supervisors and staff are not being spoken to for their jobs, and that's usually what happens when you do a job evaluation.
So we always are careful about making sure, like this report is delivered once a year to make sure we have pay equity in
3 years.
once every 3 years to make sure. But we talk about it in negotiations too, the equity report. And if we are delivered a report that says we are okay on pay equity, and then we say, and that has been approved through some governing body, that's an okay report, and then we say, I disagree with that, that's a hurdle. If we say, you know what, I don't agree with the findings of this report, that it's okay, I don't agree with the system that because you said it involves like re-looking at everything. So I would invite like some, because if we re-look at everything, then we're putting ourselves out there as some new arbiter of what is going to pass of state pay equity report.
Right.
It's a challenge for us to relook at something that has already passed some system that already has passed the muster according to the people that prepared these reports for us.
And when I say relook at, I was referring to the job grading, how we're doing our job grading.
Okay.
And if you compare it to what the scoring was 3 years ago and the growth the city has had, I'm not a statistical expert or an analyst, but it just needs to be looked at. The state has, even the person that does our job grading stated the person that created this many, many years ago through the state was a statistical person down at the U. It's been used forever, and it just, he said it is, the report is what it is. But as far as our system and what we're doing, is my recommendation.
So, okay. I'm a statistical analyst and an expert on statistics. But I'm not an expert on job description. So it sounds like it's a matter of looking at job description rather than statistical analysis, right?
Right, I'm not here to say anything about statistical analysis because I am not but when you look at this on paper and the scoring and the numbers, I think our job evaluation system just should be reviewed.
Okay,
Staff have also come to me about that, so it should be
Fair enough.
I think citywide.
I think if we want to
I
do
just
that,
want to look at everything.
I think if we want to do that, that can be a separate conversation we have. But I think to your point earlier of, we have this report that says we're in compliance, we should accept it.
And we'll get a report and that we have to post for 90 days.